Have a great day, okay?
Welcome back, everyone. This is live episode number 6 with cameras everywhere. Today we're going to have a conversation with I.A.M Inland Auditing Media. I'm going to be talking to him in just a second. I just discovered his channel, and the very first thing that I thought was, how am I not subscribed to this person? He has about 4,000 subscribers, about 9 videos, and we actually live in the same area. And I'm very good at subscribing to all these different free press investigators when they pop up. And I wasn't to him, so I reached out to him and asked him if he'd come on, introduce himself to me and to you, and he said he would. So before we get into that, I'm just going to play a couple clips from his videos. This is just a couple minutes. That way you can get an idea of who he is, and then we'll talk with him. And we're going to cap it at about 30 or 40 minutes today. If you have any questions for him, we might take those at the end if we have time. Check out I.A.M Inland Auditing Media. The link is in the description.
Waiting for somebody?
No, just gathering content for a story.
I have yet to go hang out in the clink.
Well, if they can do anything, I'm gonna have them arrest you.
I can guarantee you this, though. You're going to be disappointed in the results because they'll leave before I do.
I'm not arguing with the fact that you're here, okay?
And that it's lawful.
You've done your research, all that. I'm not going to get into that with you. What do I need to tell people?
Yeah, looking for a public records request form.
Okay. You can find it online. Have you looked online?
No, just looking to see if I can get a physical copy here.
We don't have people that are concealed in the office. We don't know who you are, so could you come outside with me?
No.
Okay, but once you get your form, I'm gonna ask you to leave. You don't belong in this lobby because you're not on probation.
I just don't really answer questions in the state.
Have you been on probation before?
We good on freedom here?
Thank you.
Thanks. We good on freedom?
Excuse me, sir?
Yeah.
I just want to let you know there's no recordings allowed in the building.
Here's what I'm going to warn all 4 of you. You really don't want to go up this mountain. I'll tell you what I think's delaying the response is that we both know what's really going on here.
Okay. They're requesting that you be trespassed.
Remember, I think they're still issuing visas for Russia if you guys want to go live in a little more constrained land. Are you going to trespass them?
We're trying to figure that out right now.
I wouldn't do that.
Okay.
You really don't want to do that, Milivac. Just, kind of brush up on the whole freedom thing. Ride a bald eagle to work maybe next time. Have some freedom juice.
And outside of that, you're a public person in a public setting, exercising First Amendment rights.
And here's the man himself, I.A.M. That's pretty impressive what we just watched there. Very, very good work.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Well, let's talk about the elephant in the room, and that's that there's no way I can identify you.
Yeah. It started unintentionally. So I started auditing a couple of years ago. I think my first one was like in northeastern Washington State, and it's still COVID, it's still masks, and a lot of places had these policies in place where you couldn't go in if you didn't have a mask. I thought, well, new to this, going to see how it goes. I was just trying it out, so kept with the masks and all that kind of stuff. And when eventually COVID restrictions were lifted, and from audits I had done, I realized it was disconcerting to people, and it often made them question whether I could do this or whatnot, and elicited responses. And I thought, after COVID restrictions lifted, I'm just going to keep this going, because one of the biggest things about auditing is your identification. Police, the government always love to ask questions about, I'm going to get your ID. I want to know who you are. And this even takes away from them one additional element, which is like facial recognition software, if they have it at police stations from video cameras or whatnot. I completely obfuscate my identity, and I think that kind of drives them crazy. And it's also a litmus test. If I can walk away without them knowing who I am, and to date no one knows who I am, they don't know what to do about that.
Right. It must scare them.
Yeah, I've had responses where people have said, I don't know who you are. I don't know what your motives are. But while that's the case, though somebody may be able to see my face and my eyes and whatnot without having any of the balaclava glasses hat on, really no one knows what your motives are when you're going into a building anyways.
Agreed. Yeah. And you can observe people being told that all the time who are not wearing masks, that are being perfectly polite and even saying exactly what they're doing and what their motives are. And then the person will literally look right back into their face and say, well, I don't know what you're doing, what your motives are. Well, I just told you. And that's just the kind of response that you're getting, you know, from the public and from the government,
Yeah.
which are more or less across the board incompetent in all the ways that they should be competent. But
Yes.
so I'm guessing that, well, first let me ask you, I noticed that you have 4,800 subscribers. Your first video on your channel has 120,000 views on it. Is your channel new or is it not new?
No, it's new. Well, okay, I guess I should put it this way. I created the channel with nothing on it, I don't know, like a year or so ago. Hadn't posted anything. I uploaded my first video, which is the rent and USPS, on the 19th of January.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the channel's by utility a month old. It's existed for about a year, but it wasn't publicly accessible.
I see. So I see you just published a video 3 hours ago.
Mm-hmm.
Panicking space executives call police. You got rude queen of DSHS learns the freedom lesson. Butthurt parole officers learn their place. Healthcare tyrants get schooled. Cops walk away. Just making sure everything is okay. People inside are scared. Rage Lord calls cops to protect him, then runs and hides. Ellenberg's postal clerk learns about freedoms over feelings. Challenged to a fight by postal clerk and threatened with trespass. And USPS postmaster learns who his boss is and doesn't like it. How did you get started doing this? And why did you want to start? Were you watching this movement for a long time before you got in? Did you just discover it pretty recently? I mean, have you been the victim of police misconduct or government abuse? What's behind your drive there?
Yeah. Appreciate you asking that. So I got into this because, well, I guess I should probably start with towards the end of what you had asked. Yeah, I've been abused, I guess you could say, by the government, you know, in the past with my dating preferences. I've dated different people of different ethnicities, and I've had police approach me and clearly being racist about me being with someone that may be Hispanic or Black or whatever. And it just was like, wow, you just think you can stop me because of this? And, you know, never really did anything. It was a long time ago, but that stuck with me. And just kind of, you know, lodged into the back of my head. And then many, many years later here, I'd say probably about 3-4 years ago, it just popped up in my YouTube feed. All of a sudden I saw these things called audits, and people were going around and going to places and filming in public. And then all of a sudden the police show up, and, you know, you've seen a million videos like I have. And in almost all the circumstances, you just see the government imposing themselves in almost any way they want. I mean, we've seen everything from violence to just, you know, detaining people for long periods of time until they give up their ID because they're frustrated or whatever. And I saw this and I thought, that is extremely frustrating. And I've always been a fan of just being on top of knowing what my liberties are and whatnot. And I saw this and it just resonated with me. And I just kept going and watching these videos. And eventually one day I was like, you know, this is a good movement. And I think I want to go out and try this out. I just decided I was going to go out and go audit a location. And once I did, it was like, I don't know, it just stuck with me and felt like I had to keep doing this.
What did you choose? Which was your first location?
If I remember correctly, boy, it's, you know, 2 years ago now. I want to say it was either up in Chewelah, Washington, or it was Post Falls. I can't remember. Some of the footage I ended up losing by accident. It was quite frustrating. I'm sure that's happened to probably some auditors here and there.
Post Falls has a reputation for being a bit tyrannical, as far as I know.
Yeah, I ironically haven't had any problems in Post Falls. As you saw, there was a Rathdrum USPS video there. I wouldn't say it was a bad audit. I mean, from the citizens, it was. The police ended up, I think, doing okay. But yeah, I didn't have any problems up in Chewelah or in Post Falls. I had the Rathdrum machine, but that was, yeah, like I said, a couple of years ago. And unfortunately, an SD card I had just got lost when I put it out and thought I'd find it again. So a lot of those earlier audits just got lost.
Mm-hmm. So when you're like watching people and you decide to start doing this, are you watching particular channels and developing a style that are you thinking about what your style is going to be, thinking about your purpose, your replies, and who are you watching at this time when you're developing yourself?
Well, I mean, I've obviously watched your channel, Long Island Audit, Amagansett Press, SJVT. Wow. I mean, just, gosh, I got a long list. I could look at the subscriptions, but it's a long list.
Yeah, I mean, there's thousands of channels, I believe. You know, I can't even stay on top of it.
Yeah, and in watching that regarding the style, I just decided to approach it organically. I take an approach prior, though. I build the foundation before I go to any audit, and the foundation for me is to understand that in each jurisdiction, there's potentially different statutes, codes, ordinances. So prior to going and doing an audit, and usually I'll do one, I'll go to a location for a week at a time, and I'll try to hit 15, 20, 30 locations. And so I study case law. I shepherdize it with my LexisNexis account. I read all the statutes, codes, ordinances, commit those to memory. And then when I get to the location, I make sure that, you know, if law enforcement's called, I am prepared to navigate the field of laws and case law so that if they try to get my ID some way or another that they're not allowed to do, I'm ready for it. And in terms of my response, I just go at it organically. I'm confident when I go there that I know what I'm talking about. So when they confront me, I'm really not overly worried about it.
Right, because you've done the reading. You can cite the law, which I've heard you do in the videos, the Public Records Law 4256, for example.
Yeah.
And if you're talking to a public records clerk, it's like almost 100% that she hasn't read the Public Records Law.
Oh,
it
yeah,
seems like
absolutely.
to me. I'm just, you know, I was impressed when I saw you citing the law, and I was like, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about, because I've also read the law, you know. So I've read the affirmative defenses of trespass before I go into a place. I, of course, read their mission statement, and I learn about what's going on. I do, you know, satellite research beforehand, you know. I know what's what, you know, so it's harder to get pushed around. But have you been pushed around?
Well, not physically. I've never had anyone lay hands on me. You know, verbally, have I had police confront me? Yeah. I just, in fact, as you saw, I did an Issaquah audit. That was from March 26th, I think, of 2021. That was the postal clerk that, you know, in accordance with RCWs of Washington State, committed assault because of what she said and how she was moving towards me. Obviously, she didn't physically touch me at all. But I re-audited Issaquah 3 weeks ago, that same USPS. And at the end of that video, which you guys will be able to see probably here in about 2 or 3 weeks or so, because I'm getting ready to go out for another 2 weeks of auditing, I was confronted by a cop, and he started getting pretty aggressive. And, you know, I tend to give what I get. So obviously not going to get physical unless I have to, which, you know, with law enforcement, it's typically not the way to go. But if I had to do that with somebody else, you know, I would. But fortunately, the way I handle myself, I don't think I've put myself in a situation where I've had to deal with that. But that cop and a few others I've dealt with have definitely pushed back. Like in the Renton USPS audit, did you watch that one?
Yeah, I watched all of them.
Okay, great. So the rent and use PS, Reyes and the other cop that trespassed me, they were pushing back. I mean, they're like, you can't be here. You're being trespassed. And it's like, they just don't know the trespass warning stat or the administrative code for Washington. They certainly don't know the trespass laws and case law, and also case law for filming in public. And so what I was doing was laying the groundwork for a suit, so that if that stuck and I couldn't find a resolution through the city before I left, that I'd end up filing a tort and dealing with it that way. But as we saw with Sergeant Skelton, he ended up squaring it away and solved the problem. Part of the thing that I've seen with some comments that have been laid is like, hey, how come you didn't just take the arrest and do a lawsuit later or whatnot? When you look at like Washington State or other states pattern jury instructions, so that what instructions are going to go to juries when they're deciding whether someone's guilty or not, criminally or civilly, tells you really what mountains you need to climb to get over that evidence hump, so that you can absolutely say this person is guilty of this. So really what I'm doing when I stretch it out like that is I'm giving them multiple opportunities, so that if they decide that they're just going to keep going at it, I can submit into evidence for discovery all this information that says, look, I gave you guys 2, 3, 4, 5 times, whatever it was. You guys just persisted, even though you had all the evidence in front of you. So you're guilty. I mean, you have done the wrong, and now you're gonna have to pay the consequence.
So one of these jury instructions, which you said, mountains to climb.
So like in Washington State, for example, well, all states really, if there's a crime that's been committed, let's say assault, for example, and that's what you're charged with, and you're going in front, you're having a trial on it, the judge is going to give jury instructions which have been decided on, so that you can't have a defense attorney, a judge, and a prosecutor give 3 different versions of this is what assault is. So it's all been agreed on ahead of time. This is the instructions that these just regular folk who are jury members, they're not lawyers, are going to get, so that they end up having a consistent set of instructions on how to deal with this. And so when you read different pattern jury instructions in Washington for, let's say, trespass, did I commit trespass? Absolutely not. I've read the pattern jury instructions. When you read what it is, in addition to the RCWs, there's obviously no trespass that's been committed. But also, if it goes into the land of civil trials, you got to understand, like, if they've committed some offense against you, what is the judge going to hand to the jury members that says, I'm accusing this officer or this city of X offense? What do those instructions say? So if you're familiar with those in advance, you can actually craft your audit in a way where you run across this opposition to meet those standards by being aware of them. And most officers, most members of government at a city, county, state level, they don't even know what pattern jury instructions are. So when you're walking them down that road, down that path, you're really just setting up the trial.
Right. And I actually heard you in your video called Healthcare Tyrants Get Schooled, which is a new video filmed February 2nd in Olympia, Washington. That's the state capital of Washington, for anyone who doesn't know that. You actually say in the video to the cop who was not good, you say, I don't think you want to climb this mountain, or something like that. And I didn't quite understand what you said at first. I thought you were saying something like, I don't think you want to challenge this man, or something. I had to replay it like many different times to figure out that you were saying this mountain. So in that point in the video is a reference to what you're talking about now. Yeah.
So that's me basically saying, so I cited in an administrative code in there. It's Washington Administrative Code 468-300-806. And in subsection 4 of that administrative code, it lines out several elements of things that an officer must give you to satisfy trespass warnings in Washington state. And it basically includes things like the officer's name, the police department they're from or agency, where you're trespassed from, how long you're trespassed from there, things like that, so that they can say, I'm a peace officer, I've given you this information, you're trespassed, don't come back. Here's the instructions for that trespass. If they don't do that, then it's a defense against trespass for you then to come back later and be like, well, I didn't know if it was a day, 5 days. I didn't know if it was just this part of the building, in case you have multiple agencies within a building, or if it's the entire building. So by me doing that, it was laying out all this information such that if it went to a civil trial or whatnot later, I could say, here's everything that he was supposed to do or should have been aware of. He wasn't. Ignorance is no excuse for the law. They have to be aware of it, and that's why he's guilty. And eventually, and I think you can see from that other police officer at the end when he kind of rushed back in, the bald white guy.
Mm-hmm.
He rushed back in and he's like, all right, you're good to go. You can film here. You are a citizen. It's your First Amendment rights. We're out of here. You could sense that rush.
Right.
And
like
I think
he was turning around to leave before he was done talking.
Yeah. Yeah. And my hunch, it is just a hunch, but I think he probably spoke to corporal, sergeant, lieutenant, whoever it was, who was like, yeah, here's the things he's saying, get out of there, because this is just going to end up in a lawsuit. So let's not do that. And then they both went out, and that was that.
Have you ever considered just thinking about what you just said about climbing the mountain and what did you call it? Pattern jury instructions. Mm-hmm. Have you ever thought about giving your first name during an audit? They can't glean really any information from a first name, and it's kind of, you're all covered up, right? So when you give your first name, you're giving an act of good faith to them. And now I know that seems strange to speak of an act of good faith toward the government or toward someone who you know has no good faith in return. But but just for the sake of a jury, like you were saying, or just for the sake of aesthetics, you could give your name, or if you didn't want to give your name, you could say, my friends call me Joe. And you can give them the opportunity to say, well, we're not friends. And then you can reply, well, I'm just trying to be friendly. And you have the same kind of thing. I'm not saying you should give your name, but I've thought about these different things. I think that giving your first name or a first name could be beneficial to you. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I've put thought to this. What should I do when I'm trying to do this? Like, should I come across more amicable and give them my name? But my impression of how I should confront agents of the government, whether it's police, postal clerks, whoever it is to look at it and say, I need to begin with maximum control in this situation. And to achieve and maintain that control is to continue using this obfuscation of my identity and to say, anything you glean from me is going to have to come from some degree of authority. And so I try to come across as cordial and polite, but clearly make it known that the name I am giving them is false, with the exception of places like, for example, Montana, in the Montana codes annotated, for example, during the investigative stop and frisk statute that they have there, or down in Nevada, especially with case law like Heibel in the 6th district from about 7 years ago. You do have to give your name if there's RAS that you've committed a crime or whatnot. So I'm aware of that, but I think it's important to set a tone of complete control. And the beautiful thing about our liberties in this country is if you use them the right way, especially during an audit, you can absolutely maintain that control. And it's disarming to them. Any bit of information, I feel anyways, that the government has, whether it's the police or someone else, it makes them feel more powerful. I've got something on this guy. And I'm also aware that all this information is going to go to a fusion center. And probably the only thing that they're going to get is, they've got recordings of my voice. So maybe that'll turn out well for them at some point in time. I don't know what kind of ninja software they have, but I can't stop that. But I think giving anything more than this hands over a little bit of control. And I just don't think it's worth it for the coming across as more amiable.
Right. So you sort of have a come and take it mentality all the way around. You want them to pull that mask off your face to see your face.
Yep. And it'll be a very expensive unmasking if they choose to do that. I want them to have to earn it. And if that's the case, then that's the case. I mean, I have no doubt. At some point, my identity is going to be attained, and it's going to be attained because they've made a mistake. And it is what it is when that happens. But this is also a litmus test. It goes to demonstrate people when I go there and walk away in the exact same state, and the government knows not one single iota more about me. It goes to demonstrate my capability to utilize my liberties to the greatest extent possible and walk away in the same state I entered.
About a couple weeks ago, I did a poll on the Cameras Everywhere community page. It got about 2,000 responses. And it was based on a statement that DirectD made. DirectD posted on his community. Well, let me pull it here.
Sure.
I don't know if anyone can read this. I'm going to read it. I'm reading this one right here.
Okay.
Do you agree? DirectD posted on his community page that we should stop using the word auditor, arguing that the word is played out, overused, and trash, and has negatively impacted progress. Normal people associate the word auditor with drama and negativity. 67% of the audience agreed, 14% disagreed, and 19% said they're ambiguous. That's from 2,000 votes. Where do you fall on that?
I mean, I can appreciate what's being said there by DirectD because, I mean, there's such a wide range of audits. I mean, you can see everything from really angry, upset people that get, frankly, I would think in a lot of places meet the standards for disorderly, for example, disorderly conduct in public or whatnot, all the way to people just being, I guess, not that way going out. I mean, I like to think I'm not being disorderly. I could see why that would be said, but at the same time, I mean, auditing's auditing. I mean, you are in fact auditing the response of the government. I think it's a good word to use. I think it's got to be, I think it's just got to be judged case by case with people. So, I mean, I don't know. I guess it's really not too much of an answer for me, but at the same time, I can appreciate where he's coming from. I just don't think it should be shied away from because I think there's good examples of, I mean, there's tons of good examples of auditors that go out there and do a really great job at auditing. And I think that's good to have that be known as auditing. Mm-hmm. In fact, if I could interject real quick on that, I think it was SJVT Jr., I think is the name of the channel. He was approached by a police officer, if I remember correctly, who is an instructor at a police academy. And apparently he approached him or SJVT some period of time ago, I can't remember how long, and said, hey, I'd like you guys to actually come to the police academy and be a part of my instruction class, like in a good way, if I think I'm remembering this correctly. And here that instructor at this police academy, I think it's in LA, but I could be wrong, is referencing it as auditing. So the name's there. I think it's just got to be one where I guess people, if they like a certain kind of audit or a certain style, just have to kind of vote with their subscriptions and say we like this, or we like it, we dislike it. We're going to vote, we're going to subscribe, or we're not going to subscribe, and I guess just over time filter out the things that are not meeting the standards of the community.
When I first started doing these videos, I never liked First Amendment audit. Never. It just sounded really clunky. It sounded weird. I wanted to change it to First Amendment test. And then I changed it to First Amendment test, and people would be like, that's not going to work. They'd comment. They'd be like, you got to say First Amendment audit. That's what everyone's searching. So I ended up changing a lot of my videos to say First Amendment audit. But I never liked it, just the ring of it necessarily. I liked First Amendment test. I like free press investigation. I like free press. I like, it's not the First Amendment we need to replace. It's the audit. I'm not saying we need to replace it because I think there is an argument to not ceding the linguistic territory to your enemies. Now, if you change it to whatever you want, let's say you change it to free press, the enemies of the free press are now just going to be enemies of the free press instead of being enemies of the First Amendment audit. If you change it to XYZ, whatever, then they're going to be opposed to that. And the only reason that they're opposed to First Amendment audit now is because of, what has happened, but I don't know. I'm kind of split on the issue. I never liked it. Like I said, I prefer something else, but
Well, I'll say this, like a lot of times, like when I go to an audit, I will say, if someone's asking, what are you doing here? A lot of times I will, I don't know if I've ever said I'm auditing the place. I'm sure I probably have here and there. What I more commonly say is I'm doing a stress test on the government. I'm here to, and inevitably I'm doing some sort of a function when I go there. I'm doing a public records request. I'm buying a stamp, getting my receipt from the post office, whatever it is. I'm doing something that is a legitimate function of any citizen, and I'm there to see how the process unfolds and if it's good, bad, or ugly. And I think with people, when I tell them that, I'm still auditing, of course, but at the same time, the people that I'm talking to on the street directly, I'm just saying, yeah, I'm just doing a stress test to see what's going on. You'll see from a video of mine, a couple of videos that'll come out here shortly from Yakima. I did a whole bunch of places in Yakima, and the Department of Corrections and the police department had some issues. And I was telling them, I'm here doing a stress test, and it looks like some of this is not going well.
Right. It usually doesn't go well. The way I've conceptualized an audit in my own head as a frame for myself is I start every video like I'm doing an advertisement for whatever agency that I'm there for. Now, that sounds like something different from what you're doing. You're doing a stress test. I mean, at least that's your frame. I don't know if that's your frame or if that's just what you say. But my frame has always been, I'm doing an advertisement. Let's see, can they do a public records request? Do they treat the public with respect? And I will give a default respect until I don't get respected back, and that's kind of how I conceived it for myself, because you can develop the feeling that what you're doing is wrong or what you're doing is odd, and people are uncomfortable and feelings, Trump rights, they think, and they're all concerned about the rights that don't exist. For example, the right to privacy in public, and they care nothing for the rights that do exist.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it really comes down to one of the biggest problems that we have is exactly what you said just a moment ago. I'm paraphrasing my own way. Social norms have come to be so rooted, so solid in the minds of everyday normal people that they believe those norms to be, in fact, the laws, which is why we so often hear when we're wherever, a post office or some other building, or even out in public, just on the sidewalk, you can't film me. It's illegal. You need to have my permission. It's strange to me that they believe that, but it's such a consistent response as we see that we can see for a fact that it is people's belief, social norms or laws. And that's the stress test, is to then see how the government responds to it. If one agency of government believes that and calls the police to square it away, will the police do the right thing and say, well, you may think that, but it's not that? And that's often where you'll see the police pulling someone back into a private room, because what they're doing. They're saying, well, he has a right to do this, and they don't want to have the person feel humiliated in front of the person who knows that and who's expressing their liberties. So it's a lot of work to try to tear away these social norms.
I was thinking that with regard to the public, the social norms of you need permission to record me, but social norms is law. That's what you just said. And I'm thinking about that in terms of the police. Now, I think about the police going around interacting with people all day long, and they're interacting with all the people that you see, and everybody's compliant. No one exercises their rights, hardly ever.
Yeah.
So when a police officer comes up to you and says, "Hey, I need to see your ID," and you say no, he starts twitching because because this is like a less than 1% encounter for this police officer. For all intensive purposes, there is no Fourth Amendment for the police officer on the street because no one's willing to exercise it. For all intents and purposes, there's no First Amendment. There's no Fifth Amendment because people aren't willing to exercise these rights. Most people are not. And so when you start doing it, they start short circuiting. They don't know what to do because they're like, wait a second, everybody submits, everybody bends over. I wanted to, we're running short on time, but I want to get your opinion just on this really quick. These two other polls on the page here. Pick the best answer. The nature of police work is hilarious, precarious, nefarious, mysterious, ingenious.
Boy.
I'll read it again. Pick the best answer. The nature of police work is hilarious, precarious, nefarious, mysterious, and ingenious. This is a 68% of respondents said nefarious, which I actually disagree with. But
yeah, so I would say this. I would say mysterious, but the reason I answer that way is because when I think of the nature of police work, I don't think of it as where the nature is now. I think what is the function of it? What is the nature of it? You know, its function, and it's in such a weird place because we've got this dichotomy between what it should be and what it is. And I think that's what makes it mysterious, because we know it shouldn't be what it is right now in many, many ways. Like you just pointed out, you know, the police just walk up and ask for your ID. Everybody's absolutely used to just, here you go, handing it over and, you know, being the good citizen and doing what the government tells you to do, and the police and whatnot. But it shouldn't be that. And it should be, there's an example of from a Moses Lake audit I did at the 911 center. And giving a little away here for that one. It'll be coming out in a few weeks too. But cop just walks up. Somebody called from the 911 center and he's like, "Hey, what's going on?" I'm like, "Not much." He's like, "All right, well, I'm just going to go inside and talk to them. See you later." That's what it should be. Literally. I mean, the audit was like 6 minutes because I was walking around for an hour. Nothing happened. I was waiting for the police officer to show up because the police officer, I'm guessing, had prioritized the call as in, there's a guy taking pictures on public property. I'll get there in about an hour because I got more important things to do. And he's like, "Oh gosh, I got to get to this." So he goes out there and, you know, he's just having a big glass of freedom, went inside and did his thing. And that was that. And that's what it should be. And that's why I say it's mysterious, because you get that, which it should be every single time. And then we get the crazy things that you see all the time too. You know, cops throwing people over the hood of a car, cuffing them up, taking them to jail, telling them they can't do something. And you're just like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah, you know, when I and just for everybody watching, I almost always disagree with you people on these polls. I'm almost always in the minority. In this case, I'm in the 14% precarious. I thought that the nature of police work was precarious because police work is basically about order maintenance, and at the same time they take an oath to the Constitution. So they so to maintain the order, you're essentially doing law enforcement, or you're patrolling, you're doing peace officer work, whatever you're doing. You're gonna have to ask questions, you're gonna have to get answers, and you're gonna have to make arrests. You're gonna have to maybe use physical violence against people.
Yeah.
And you're gonna have to protect the innocent, and you might have to sacrifice yourself. Now, at the same time, the Bill of Rights makes many of those things very difficult. If someone who is educated in exercising the rights of afforded to us in the Bill of Rights makes police work more difficult. So police are on this edge where they need to get answers, but they can't get any answers.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? They need to make an arrest, but they need to respect all the constitutional rights at the same time. So it's on this weird edge, you know, where it's like we need super ethical men to do this job.
Yeah.
Who are thoughtful and sophisticated, and instead we have morons. You know, it takes not everybody can like walk that kind of line, you know. In fact, I would say most people can't walk that line. So I mean, you see how the population is. The police are drawn from the population. I mean, are we not fucked?
I think that's what led to the large amount of views for my Renton USPS video. You know, people saw Sergeant Skelton after I had gone up there to get this, you know, hopefully in my mind at the time, hopefully to get this situation rectified. And look at the responses, the comments. You know, I think there's like 1,600 comments or something like, or 2,100 or something like that. I can't remember, somewhere in that area. And I'd say a solid 60% of the comments are, clone this man. He's the best cop in the universe. And really, that should be every cop. Because what Sergeant Skelton did was what you never see or very rarely see. He had no pride in the situation. He said, well, I don't know. So why don't you show me what you got? I'll investigate, which is exactly what cops are supposed to do in those situations. Figure out what's going on. And I'll go down and talk to the other party. We'll figure it out. And when I was standing outside of the post office when he went down there, I was outside for 45 minutes waiting. He came out, he called all the way up to the USPS postmaster's office, spoke with Rod Spurgeon and said, yeah, this is the case, and had those people on the phone. When do you ever see that, though? I mean, you didn't see it from the first two police officers. Their whole thing was, I'm in charge, I know everything, and I'm going to violate your rights. I'm going to kick you out of here, and I just expect you to deal with it. And you saw the hostility from the officer Reyes when I told him, I said, you know, if this sticks, you're going to lose your qualified immunity because you're doing this wrong. Oh, whatever, you're one of those guys, gives me his card and all that. It's like, that is the problem. And that's why I say
one of those guys.
Yeah, you get a Sergeant Skelton, which is the unicorn, and then you get all these other guys like Reyes, for example. They're just not taking the time because, I don't know, maybe they got 1,000 calls they got to deal with, or they just suck at their job, or they're just jerks, or all of it. And that's what all this is about, at least for me, is knocking down these walls and leading things up to, if necessary, a tort, a civil tort, because that's really the only time you ever see these places respond to the problems. Kind of like when you saw I.A.M. Against Press in, what was that, Silverthorne, Colorado, I think, and it was a $9,500 settlement when they hauled them
post office.
Yeah, at the post office. And you know, the city attorney was probably like, for God's sakes. And that's why I was telling Ranow and Milburn and the corporal at the Issaquah audit 2 years ago. I said, just call the city attorney. They'll tell you. You don't want to do this. But he couldn't take the answer. And like you saw inside, Milburn was saying, well, are you talking about the G14 up at the top? It's like, yes, that's like the boss's boss's boss. So yeah, when he sends me an email that says they're not allowed to do this, it would just be like the assistant chief telling you need to not do something, but a sergeant responds in the middle of a traffic stop. You're still going to listen to the assistant chief because he's above the sergeant.
All right. Well, we are over time, but can you hang around for a couple more minutes and see if there's some questions from the chat here? So
Absolutely.
If anyone's in the chat, I see we have Wrights Crispy in here, Auditing Erie County Ceiling Fan Man. There's a whole bunch of other people in there. So if you have a question for I.A.M. Free, put it in the chat. And I'll put it up on the screen and he can answer it before we take off. We'll be back in 30 seconds.
Continue to join as we survey the state of America through the lens of cameras everywhere with me, Pickthall. To support this channel, the absolute best thing everyone can do is subscribe, like, share the videos, and comment below. To make a direct impact, please send donations to paypal.me/cameraseverywhere. Follow our social media, send videos for review or other correspondence to mrpickthall@gmail.com. As for the most attentive among you, find links to our affiliate channels in the description, including to our personal channels, Pickthall and Mrs. Pickthall.
Submit or die.
I made that for the for all the public, you know.
It's awesome. Good job. Look great.
Yeah, so does anybody have any questions? Let's see. I don't see any.
Okay.
Rice Crispy is the boss. I'm going to wait another minute, guys. Let's see. Direct D was in here. Melanie. Miss Pickthall. What else do we got? Let's see. Oh, okay. Nice. Well, I don't see any. That's it. We answered all the questions.
All right.
Yeah.
Great.
Very good. Thanks for coming on. I'd love to have another conversation with you about another topic or the same topic another time.
Absolutely. I love talking about this stuff. I'm really passionate about it. And yeah, so anytime, man.
Okay, great. Thanks for joining, and I'm going to look forward to watching all your videos. Do you have any social medias or anything besides your YouTube channel, which is linked in the description? Everybody should go down the description, click the link, subscribe to his channel, watch his videos. Do you have any other social medias, Twitters or anything like that that you want to plug?
Not yet. I've been out auditing so much. I'm just trying to, play catch up. I'm basically going to be out for the entire month of March auditing, just pretty much 5 to 6 days a week. So once I get back from that, as we all know, it's going to be a lot of editing. And during that time, pretty much April, when I'm doing that is when I'm going to start working on getting some social media pages up and whatnot. Trying to, get some good Instagram photos out there of some great places I'm going to and people I meet and all that kind of stuff. And then I'll put that out there. So yeah.
Great. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for your service, and I look forward to seeing more of your work.
Likewise. Hey, I really appreciate you having me on. Stay safe, everybody. Have a great day. I'll see you out in the field.
Thanks for joining, guys. See you later. Have a great one.
Have a great day, okay?
By the way, this gentleman killed his mother and his sister. Do you have that on tape?